Now make sure you watch the video all the way through. I am going to be showing you some extremely important charts, but I want to start right here by showing you this chart because we're trying to get now a reversal, a bullish reversal of conditions. Now, we had the late day rally. During the session, the S&P dropped below the 10-period moving average. That's that red line right there. But by the end of the session, we closed above the upper end of the cloud. Now, again, I told you over here on Thursday, the previous Thursday, over a week ago, that we're going to rally up towards that 200-period moving average. We've done that. Okay, so now the question is, are we going to try to get above the 200 and set up a higher low, or come back and get a deeper higher low and eventually get above that 200-period moving average? Or are we going to come down and undercut this low and end up forming a divergence and seeing the awesome oscillator go back to red, and we end up getting some volatility ahead of April 2nd, which is, a week and a half away. Again, I'm looking for a 5-leg push lower here. It might be done right here, and we might be starting wave 5. Wave 4 might have completed with this, this A, B, C structure. But it's also possible that this 5-leg push lower is not done. But we're now getting back above the 10-period this week, which again, over here, we had this failed breakout above the January high. And we got a reversal of conditions. The red bars, the red cloud, we dropped below the 10-period. And we haven't been above the 10-period. And now we're getting this week above the 10-period. So is this a counter trend and we still get this divergence? Or do we see this turn green now? It's going to turn green on Monday. Does it remain that way? And we try to build momentum to get back above the 200-period moving average. And I think two scenarios are likely. Now, I'm telling you, I think we get a higher low or we get a lower low, and I think you're in a bottoming process. Right now on the internet, for social media, that matter, the media, telling us, oh, no, we're going to have this massive stock market crash right now and the tariffs and all this, There's just no hope, and again, we're likely going to see negotiations. We're likely going to see something happen that's going to give the market hope and give us a bottom and a rebound back up. So the question now really becomes: do we just start seeing green here and go into positive territory and start? Now we're getting green here. You see the little arrow. We didn't get the bar blue. It did turn blue here. It turned back to red, but we did close above the 10-period moving average. We closed above the cloud here. And that's flipping the cloud. It will flip the cloud back to green on Monday. That's why we had the white space there, because now the cloud is going to change colors. So the question now is, can we get back above the 200-period moving average, or do we end up getting this divergence? So we'll be watching. MACD got the bullish cross. Okay, does it end up forming a divergence? And we come down here and we end up getting a divergence. And maybe go higher and stall up the 200, or stall immediately and turn down? Or do we plow on through that area and things remain green and we start seeing this go into positive territory, and that bullish cross, we don't get a divergence. It just marks a bottom. And we have that bottom from the previous week with our bottoming tail in the weekly time frame. So you got a bullish reversal of conditions, no blue bar yet, but you've got the green going on. So we'll see what becomes of that. Is that just short-lived? Or does this amount to the start of a reversal with the higher low, and we now get a higher high? We'll see what happens. Got to get back above the 200 to recover to move towards the 50-period moving average. The awesome oscillator down here just above the center line. The MACD is moving back to the center line. Do we recover surrounding our 50-week moving average? This is the spiders right here. We have that bottoming tail. Does that low end up holding? Let me just bring it up closer here. Does that low end up holding our bottoming tail? Got a candle of indecision this week in the form of a doji. Do we end up getting a rebound back up and confirming this bar? We did not confirm it. You got to confirm it. Candlesticks mean nothing unless they get confirmation and a follow through. Do we see confirmation of that and we end up getting green bars, in the coming in the coming days or months ahead, the coming weeks, and we confirm that we began to rebound back up, bearish reversal of conditions here in the weekly time frame? Do we change that and attempt a recovery with the bottoming tail, or come back down and test it, undercut it, and end up, rebounding, still climbing above the 50-period moving average? So can we get back above this 50-period? We tried the previous week, and then right now we're closing just underneath it. So going to be watching. this low on the weekly chart, this bottoming tail on the S&P 500. You have the same thing on the NASDAQ. Then we came to just under the 50-week moving average. You got a bottoming tail. You get a candle of indecision in this doji spinning top-looking candlestick. Again, MACD coming down to the center line. You start going into negative territory, you got to get a bigger dump. Again, my guess is you're in a bottoming process. Still think the S&P is going to go to new highs. We'll see what happens with the NASDAQ because, again, NVIDIA, I believe, has topped, and you're now getting a death cross on NVIDIA, so it can be problematic for the NASDAQ. But it may move to new high, and NVIDIA may not if we can recover. Diverge with the S&P at a later date, in a couple of months from now or several weeks from now or something. Bottoming tail. You got a potential hammer right here. Get a candle of indecision. Can we get back above that 50-week moving average on the NASDAQ? Do we see green bars? Do we go negative here and get this bigger dump? Or do we actually see this come back up and end up getting this larger divergence on NASDAQ, or maybe a confirmation of a lower high if we can't make new highs? Because, again, sometimes NASDAQ diverges with S&P. But do we see that happen on both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500? Here's back to the S&P 500. Both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, their awesome oscillators in the weekly time frame came down just above zero. Does it go negative, or do we start going positive, and do we see a recovery? We'll be watching this low with great interest as we go into next week and as we move closer towards April 2nd. Will we confirm a reversal? Will we bounce off these 50-week moving averages? We came down to just under them. Will we recover and move to go back and fill the gap up here and move back towards the 20 and the 10-week moving average and try to get a recovery, really moving back to that 50-day moving average in the daily time frame that I've been talking about? So here it is. So again, in the daily time frame, do we try to get above the 200? And I took it off here so we can see that weekly chart up close, but do we recover here, or do we see the red happen, or do we even see the red happen and get a higher low? But those are the two scenarios that I think are most likely. Either we've bottomed and we're going to eventually get back above that 200, or we're going to get one more low and form a divergence and undercut the low here and end up coming back down and getting a divergence on the awesome oscillator in the RSI, where they get a higher low and price goes to a lower low. Did get the start of what could be a bullish reversal of conditions. Now we got to flip the bars to blue. It's got to stay that way. So we'll see what happens as we go into next week. CD getting the bullish MACD cross. We'll see what happens. We just go up and flirt with the 200 and then come back down, or do we try to bust up through that 200? Or does this fail immediately? We'll be watching. Does it fail, or does it mark a turning point? The S&P daily chart and NASDAQ, the same thing. We had that failed breakout above the December high on the NASDAQ. I talked about it. There was no confirmation, and then we had the reversal of conditions. We've been below the 10, and now we're getting back above the 10 period here. Bars are still red, reflecting the trend, but you did get a close above the cloud. Is it just a fake out, and we still get this move, these red bars? So we'll be watching to see how it unfolds. Do we still get that divergence or not? Again, right now the narrative is that we're going to see the bottoms fall out of the stock market. Now moving into the bear market, there's no hope, and sentiment is very, very bearish. We have extreme fear, likely, again, in a bottoming process. So for the last couple of weeks here, we dropped below the 200, and we're hovering underneath it. We're probably in a bottoming process. It may not be done. Could be with those bottoming tails in the weekly time frame. They did not get confirmed, and they do it next week. We'll see what happens. Got to get back above these 200 period moving averages here. And then again, we're likely going to move towards the 50. So if we can get a recovery, if that is a low, we need to see a push here soon above the 200 period to prevent the 50 from crossing below it. So we'll be watching that. Same thing as I said on the S&P. Do we just see the green bars continue and go into positive territory without any kind of red showing up or any kind of pullback and marking this as a bottom, or do we undercut that and form the diversion? So we'll be watching. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel. If you could take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. I just ask that you do what you can to help out because I don't want sponsors. I turn them down. I was contacting YouTube channels and I get contacted all the time and I turn it down. I don't want to sell you anything. A lot of shady deals on the internet and I just don't want to do it. I need to hear from you in order to make that work. So if you can take a moment and partner with me by supporting the channel today, I'd really appreciate it. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. And I thank you for your consideration for that. About this chart in just a moment. If the bottom is in, I need to see signals begin to turn back to bullish. Bullish reversal of conditions in the daily time frame. We got to build upon that. We got to get back above the 200. You get rid of the red. And here again, since we peaked out, we've had red bars, we've had a red line. Got to flip it back with the green bars and the blue line. It's S&P intraday. Now, intraday, we're stalling at some resistance areas. We've got to be able to flip that. Flip the bars back to green. Flip the cloud. We need to see some green. The risk is that on oscillators, we come back down and we end up forming divergences. That we come back down, and you get a divergence or larger divergence, and you come back and undercut this low, and you form a divergence. Do it on the awesome oscillator in the daily time frame. If we're going to build upon, we got a bullish reversal of conditions on Friday. We had the momentum line turn bullish earlier in the week. If we're going to build upon that, momentum is going to, remain bullish, then we got to start flipping some of these signals back to bullish intraday and then begin to try to change the trend signals in the daily. Now here's the daily chart. If the momentum line is to remain bullish and flip the trend signals, if the reversal of conditions is to continue and we get back above the 200, we need to see the trend signals all begin to turn bullish. Got to get all the red going here back to green. Got to have momentum, go back into positive territory. The risk is, again, that we have things remain red, we get rejection or go a little higher and hit the 200 and get rejection, and we come back and take out the low here and get that divergence on indicators. That is the risk, that we end up forming a divergence. Now, if we see that happen, that will likely mark a bottom. There's going to be great fear. We're going to see this massive crash, and it will likely mark a bottom if it happens. But this could be a bottom with our bottoming tail here in the weekly time frame. So we'll be watching to see, do we confirm it next week and get back above the 200 period, back above these highs and start getting a higher low, higher high, or do we still get another higher low that comes back and tests this low, or do we try to take it out? And those are the two scenarios. Now, the scenario on the internet is that, okay, the tariffs in a week and a half and the bottom's going to fall out of the stock market. It's over. And that's the sentiment. And that's the extreme fear we're seeing. And it's likely carving out a bottom here. And maybe the bottom's done with our bottoming tail on the weekly chart, but maybe there's a little bit more work to be done with oscillators forming divergences like the awesome oscillator, or here with momentum forming a divergence with the S&P. Now, in turn, I have this programmed to where the bars will begin to turn back to bullish, but they got to stay that way. It can't be a fake move, but they've got to turn back to bullish and then remain that way. And then we got to see all these trend signals begin to turn back. You got to see these signals begin to turn back to green. Everything turn back to green. Bars turn back to green. You got to see all this stuff happen. And then the line needs to turn back to blue. It marked a turn here, and it's been red ever since. We got to see everything turn back to green. The line turn to blue and get rid of all this red and get back above that 200 period moving average. And if we do, then we'll see oscillators go into the positive region. Now, another thing to be aware of is that there is a support area directly below. We've come to just above it. And right here, here's our VWAP. And this horizontal support is from the September low, the higher low that's set up. Right below that level is our VWAP. And this goes back to the 2023 low. This is the VWAP anchored from the 2023 low. So that is an important area of support. And again, if we do undercut this low, it's a good chance that this area is going to hold here in the low 5,400 area. Now we've dropped 10.5% so far from the February 19th high down to this low. That could be a bottom with our bottoming tail, but do we undercut it again? Maybe we get another bottoming tail. Candle of indecision in the weekly time frame this week, so we'll be watching. Can we get back above the 200 period? That's a black line you see right there. So again, the support area, again, our September low, and then below that, our September area of support right here. Below that, we have this area in here, and we have the August low from the July sell-off. So you've got some support right in here and then over here that's making this area of support right in here. So you've got quite a bit of support, but if we do go lower, keep your eye on that September low. Now, it's possible that we have that bottoming tail as a bottom in the weekly time frame. We're seeing some bullish signals here, false signal here, but again, some very, very nice signals at turns. So it's very possible that, again, this is marking a turning point, but we got to see everything begin to turn back to bullish. We got to start getting the bars turning back to green. We got to start seeing indicators and trend signals start turning back to green. And that'll happen when we get back above the 200 period moving average. We've seen signals like this right here in the daily time frame on the S&P, and we've seen other signals like right here. We saw some bottoming signals. Now this could be a short-term bottom, giving us a rally back up to the 200. Bitcoin had some bottoming signals. It rallied, and then it went down and made a lower low. We'll see if this is going to mark that. But I told you, again, in order to bottom out, we got to get these signals, which we have gotten. Then you had to see momentum begin to flip. We got the bullish reversal of conditions. Prior to that, we got that on Friday. Prior to that, earlier in the week, on Wednesday, we had the momentum line turn back to blue. So again, it had turned back to bearish after we began to get that fill breakout. Now it's turning back to blue. So again, you're getting a bullish signal there. And I told you, you got to see the bottoming signals and you got to see the momentum shift. The next thing you got to have happen is starting to see the trend signals begin to turn. You got to get the ribbon back to bullish. You got to get the cloud back to bullish. Got to get momentum in positive territory. So we'll see if that can happen. Or do we go higher and end up forming a divergence and stalling at the 200? Or do we turn right here and now? We'll be watching. Or can we clear that 200 period moving average as I've been talking about? But those are the two scenarios. Either we go and undercut the previous low and you get a lower low and a divergence, like maybe right here with momentum. That's what Bitcoin did. We don't have to get a divergence, but we very well could. And again, if Bitcoin it's struggling around the 200 period moving average, if we can solidly push above that, then S&P can follow Bitcoin and get back above the 200 period moving average. But Bitcoin has likely bottomed at key horizontal support. The S&P is around that key horizontal support. So we'll see, is this a bottom, or do we go back and get a divergence on the awesome oscillator, on momentum, on the RSI, things like that, or not? But again, you do have momentum bullish. You do have some bottoming signals. Is it a short-term bottom and momentum flips back to bearish? A final flush out, complete the bottom, or do we confirm the bottoming tail in the weekly chart next week? We did not confirm it this week, and we start seeing this marked as a bottom with trend signals turning back to bullish and getting back above the 200 period moving average. If a bottom is in, and we're starting to see some green bars, if a bottom is in, then we need to get above the 200. We need to see the trend signals begin to turn back to bullish. We need the momentum. We got the bullish reversal of conditions on Friday. We had the momentum line turn bullish. We need it to stay that way if the rally is going to continue. We start off the week with the rally and stall at the 200 and tag it, and then end up coming back down and having the move fail ahead of the April 2nd tariffs. We bottom ahead of the tariffs and get a rally, maybe have some volatility with it, or does the tariffs give us a bottoming process? We'll be watching. Okay, we had the market squeak out a gain on Friday. We had options expiration this week, so we had a lot of volatility, up and down moves all week. The bottoming tail the previous week, I'm watching that low, and I'll show you what I'm watching for and show you the charts. And again, either we're going to go down and undercut that low and get a divergence on the awesome oscillator, or setting up a higher low, one or the other. But again, right now, the conventional wisdom on social media, going to have the tariffs a week and a half from now, the reciprocal tariffs, and again, we're going to see the market just collapse. That's the conventional wisdom all over the internet. And we know that's going to happen. How do we know the tariffs are not going to be paused or delayed? Maybe they start and then they're paused immediately, or maybe they're delayed and they don't happen at all. How do we know this? I doubt that Europe's not going to come to the negotiating table. I'm sure India is going to come to the negotiating table. These, countries in the European Union, again, they're going to be forced to come to the negotiating table. If they slap on retaliatory tariffs, well, Trump's just going to slap on more tariffs. The media wants us to believe, we're just going to have these tariffs and we're all going to die. And again, that's not the way it works. They're going to be negotiations. It's a businessman, and he's going to try to negotiate better trade for the United States. Still could see volatility ahead of that, or we could try to rally. I'll show you what I'm watching for, and then get some volatility just ahead of it or something. I think you're going to get a massive rally. We're seeing inflows this week. It's the highest amount of inflows that we've had since, during 2025. Far. If we're going to collapse and everything's, right now, why is the big money coming in a big way? Now, we had the market squeak out a gain on Friday. The Dow was up 0.8%, up 32 points. The S&P was up the same, 0.8%, up about 4.5 points, almost 5 points to 5667.5. The NASDAQ gained just over 0.5%. The Russell declined by just over 0.5%, and the VIX was down by 0.63% to close at 19.28. The market squeaked out a gain after a 4-week losing streak, and we had a lot of volatility. We had options expiration this week. During this session, we had, I guess you might call it, some good tariff news. Trump came out and said there will be flexibility on the reciprocal tariffs, and again, they're expected to come on board there April 2nd. And again, the narrative on the media, with the media, and the narrative on social media is that we're going to get these tariffs and the stock market's going to collapse and it's over and that's it, and we're just going to have these tariffs and nothing's going to be done. That's it. Poppycock. You don't think that, if Trump throws on tariffs on Europe and Europe retaliates and Trump throws on more tariffs, you don't think Europe's going to come to the negotiating table? That's kind of being naive, don't you think? Saw that happen with Canada. Trump put on the steel and aluminum tariffs, 25% on Canada, and Canada did retaliatory tariffs, and they did this 25% surcharge on electricity going into the United States. Trump doubled the tariffs on aluminum and steel for Canada, and they caved immediately. You think Europe's going to do the same thing? So if Trump slaps on, they slap on retaliatory tariffs, Trump matches them, and then they do it again. You think they're just going to keep doing that until it's 10,000% tariffs on both sides? You think that's reality? I don't think so, my friend. If they do retaliatory tariffs, Trump will just match them, and then they'll cave and they'll come to the negotiating table. They may even come to the negotiating table before April 2nd. See, and the narrative is we're just going to have these tariffs. The media is telling us, we're going to have this trade war, and that's going to be it. And not the way it works. Tariffs, Trump's using them as a bargaining chip to get them to the table, the negotiating table, to try to get better trade with Europe and other places, other countries in Europe. You gotta be checking your brain at the door to believe the stuff that the media is telling us. The media is telling us, the tariffs that are in place in Europe, which are extremely high, and Canada and other places, tariffs in India, these tariffs, they don't cause recession, and they don't cause inflation. But the United States, those tariffs, they cause inflation. They're going to cause a recession. The tariffs caused inflation. Europe, who has extremely high tariffs, would have hyperinflation right now. Tariffs don't cause inflation. Tariffs with Trump and with the aluminum and steel, and we had the tariffs in 2018. Inflation went down. We had the high tariffs of 40% in the 1920s. We had deflation. I mean, this is a myth. Media does what they do, and tries to create this bogus narrative. I'm a free trader. I'm not a fan of tariffs. I'm not a fan of Trump's tariffs. But again, these other countries and Europe, their tariffs are more egregious than Trump's tariffs. But it's crickets. The media is silent about all those tariffs. Why haven't all those tariffs caused inflation in Canada? I mean, they've got tariffs that are hundreds of percent on imports from the United States exporting dairy products or agriculture and these kinds of things into Canada, and they're very, very high tariffs, hundreds of percent. We not have all this inflation. Canada. Europe has high tariffs. Why do we not have all this inflation? You see what I'm saying? I mean, you got to be just a Kool-Aid drinker to believe what the media is trying to sell us right now. Hopefully, Europe will come to the negotiating table, and countries will begin to come to the trading partners. Different countries will come to the negotiating table, and how do we know that we're going to have these tariffs on April 2nd? How do we know they're not going to be paused or delayed? When if Europe comes to the negotiating table, the EU comes to the negotiating table, and they're delayed until May or June? How do we know? And then the market goes, oh, hope of a deal, and we get this big rally. Maybe something doesn't happen with it, and that's the end of it. But how do you know they're not going to come to the negotiating table? They likely are. How do you know they're not going to end up working out some kind of deal? Try to do what they can to prevent their economies from going into recession. So you have to understand. So again, narrative, we're going to get these tariffs, and then that's just going to be it, and it's going to be the trade war. And you're going to have negotiations, and you're going to have hope, and you're going to have the hope that maybe the tariffs go away, and maybe there is free trade. And again, why is Trump doing all this? Well, he's trying to level the playing field, make American workers more competitive in the global market, and bring investment into the United States, factories being built in the United States. How about opening up markets that are closed right now to the United States? How about unlocking some of those closed markets, like in India, and some of the closed markets to the United States in Europe because of their high tariffs? I've been talking about these two possibilities for the Elliott Wave count, and again, one is that we've completed the wave 4 right here. The other is that with the blue count, that this was 3 ? 4 ? And then we come back down and we undercut this level and 5. And there's major horizontal support directly below if that ends up happening, and we're just above it right here. But I think that this move is corrective. Now, I told you, again, when we see the stock market top out, it's going to kick off the bear market with a 20% crash. That's what happened in 2000. That's what happened in 2007. On into 2008 there. Again, it kicked it off with about a 20% decline. The Fed panics. You get the Fed panicking, and they do the emergency cuts. I've been through this. I've been to this rodeo before. What happens? The market gets a rebound, and then the selling resumes, and you usher in the bear market, and the market begins to price in the recession. Recession that the Fed's telling us we're not going to have, we're going to have. I think that this is a sell-off you get before you get the final blow-off top, because, again, this looks corrective to me. I think we have wave 3 over here, the intermediate wave 3. I think you have an A, I think you have a B, and I think you have a C, either here or you're going to get it over here, and that's going to complete the intermediate wave 4. Either it's done or it's going to complete down here, just undercutting this level just a bit and forming a divergence on the awesome oscillator and maybe on the RSI. If we go up to the 200, you still may see that happen and come back here and get something like that. You still may see that happen like that with the RSI and with the awesome oscillator. So we still may flirt with that 200 period. I told you we were going to rally towards it. We did. We've got the topping tails there on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we tried to drop below the 10-period moving average on Friday, and we couldn't do it. We squeaked out a gain, broke the 4-week losing streak. So we're going to be watching. Do we undercut this level and get the wave 5 and the blue count is correct, or do we have a bottom over here and our bottoming tail in the weekly time frame? That's correct, and we establish a higher low here or a little bit lower, and we get a higher low, and then we eventually get above that 200 period. Now our 50 period is eventually where we're going to rally to once we get back above the 200. And again, I've talked about that with the 2000 and 2007 topping processes. I think that this is what you likely have. The question is, the bottoming process, is it done here, or does it finish over here and we undercut this level a little bit? We'll be watching to see how it unfolds. We did get the bullish MACD cross there on Friday. We don't have to form a divergence, but we could. We had a little tiny divergence there on the RSI here, just a little tiny one. And we did have the bullish divergences on the 60-minute chart, but you had a little tiny divergence there with these lows that developed here. We'll be watching, can we get back above the 200, or do we have to go back and test this low and maybe take it out? We'll be watching to see how this unfolds. A bullish reversal of conditions. You've got momentum, bullish with the momentum line. You've got to get back above this 200 period. You have the 10 below it. Now you're getting the 20 down here, dropping here. You got to clear this cloud, the trending cloud here in the daily time frame, recover above that 200. So we'll see how that unfolds. Now I think one of these will create a bottom. Either the bottom's in or we get it over here somewhere. And then I think you come up here and you get this breathtaking rise. Now this may be spaced out over months. Again, it could just be a few weeks, say several weeks. You know, it could be that it goes on for 4 to 8 weeks, or this could drag out a little bit on into the summer. But we're going into April and then on into May. Could we see a breathtaking rise and see this, when we had the 1,000 rally back up, it did it in less than 4 weeks. When we had it in 2007, it did it in about 9.5 weeks. So, or does it take a little bit more time? But we'll be watching. That's why I'm predicting we're going to get a 15 to 20% rally if this low holds, and maybe a little bit more than that if we go a little bit lower. Maybe 23, 24, 25% if we, depending on how low we go. Again, the sell-off, it's been 10.5% so far. In 2007, we went down 12%, and then we rallied up to new highs. In 2000, we went down 10.40%. So very close to what we've seen here. I think this is a preview of coming attraction. So those are the wave counts that I have for the S&P 500. Now, if I zoom out here, again, you can see it again. I think we have 3 over here. I think we have 4 over here. But I think leading up into this this rally, we had this trend line really acting as resistance. And then right here, after we peaked in December, then we hit and formed a new trend line that acted as resistance with the January high and the February high. So I'll be watching that trend line when we attempt to rally back up towards the 50-period moving average.